Hello dear friends, this is your personal English coach Divyam here, and today we're gonna study the poem called The Road Not Taken, written by Robert Frost. So let's begin. Let's only focus on the first line first. Two roads diverge in a yellow wood. What does this line mean? This line means that here our speaker is describing a fork in the road. The poem was first published in 1916 when cars were only just beginning to become prominent. So these roads in the woods are probably more like paths, not roads like we would think of them today. The woods are yellow, which means that it's probably fall and leaves are turning colors. It is autumn. Diverged is just another word for split. There's a fork in the road. Now let's focus on the next lines. And sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood. The speaker wants to go down both roads at once, but since it's impossible to walk down two roads at once, he has to choose one road. The speaker is sorry, he can't travel both roads, suggesting regret. Because of this impossibility of traveling both roads, the speaker stands there trying to choose which path he is going to take. Because he's standing, we know that he's on foot and not in a carriage or car. Let's take a look at next lines. And look down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Meaning, the speaker really wants to go down both paths. He's thinking hard about his choice. He's staring down one road, trying to see where it goes. But he can only see up to the first bend, where the undergrowth, the small plants and greenery of the woods blocks his view. This is where we start to think about the metaphorical meaning of the poem. If our speaker is, as we suspect, at the fork in the road of his life and not at an actual road, he could be trying to peer into his future as far as he can. But since he cannot really predict the future, he can only see part of the path. Who knows what surprises it could hold? Let's go to the next line. Then took the other as just as fair. So after all this build-up about one road, which he's looked down for a long time, our speaker takes the other path. Then we get a tricky little phrase to describe this road. It's as just as fair. Read without the first as. This phrase is clear. If you think of fair as meaning attractive or pretty, but the first as makes the phrase a little more difficult. Combining the words just and fair in the same phrase is a play on words. Both of these words have multiple meanings. The phrase could mean something like as just as it is fair, as in proper, righteous and equal. But this doesn't quite apply to road. Yet we understand and trust that our speaker wouldn't let things get awkward without meaning it. We are guessing that he means the road is just as pretty, but that in the metaphorical world of this poem, he thinks he made the fair or right choice. But it's not fairer, it's just as fair. So he was choosing between two roads or futures that were different but potentially equally good. Let's go down to line number 7 and 8. And having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. The speaker still seems pretty uncertain when he explains that this second path is better. it is only perhaps better. Then the speaker tells us why the path is better. It seems like it hasn't been walked on very much because it's grassy and doesn't look worn. Be careful not to think that the phrase wanted wear is personification. It is alliteration though. Wanted in this instance means something more like lacked. Let's jump down to line number 9 and 10. Though, as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. The speaker of this poem really can't seem to make up his mind. Just when we think we've got a declaration about which path is better, he changes his mind and admits that maybe they were equal after all. The as for that refers to the path being less worn. The passing there refers to traffic, probably on foot, just like our speaker that may have worn the paths down. Going to the next set of lines. And both that morning equally lay. In leaves no step had trodden black. Here again we hear that the paths are equal, but we find out something new, that it's morning. It's possible that our speaker is forced to travel to this place on that day. The paths are covered with leaves which haven't been turned black by steps crushing them. Wait, we thought one path was grassy and now it's covered with leaves. Possibly the leaves aren't very thick, or the grass sticks up in between them, or maybe the speaker isn't being quite honest. Let's go to the next line. Oh, I kept the first for another day. The speaker seems like he's already regretting his decision. He is rationalizing his choice of path made by saying he will come back to the one he missed later. This is a familiar way to deal with difficult choices. You can always come back and try it again later, we think. With an O at the beginning and an exclamation point at the end, this line is emphatic. The speaker feels strongly about what he's saying here. Let's go to the next set of lines. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. The speaker realizes that this or his hopes to come back and try the other path may be foolish. He knows how ways lead on to ways. How one road can lead to another and then another until you end up very far from where you started. Because of this, he doesn't think he'll ever be able to come back and take that other path, as much as he wishes he could. Here we return to the metaphorical meaning of the poem. In any life decision, we can hedge our bets by thinking we can always come back, try a different option later. But sometimes our decision takes us to the other decisions and yet still others, and it's impossible for us to retrace our steps and arrive back at that original decision. It's like deciding which college to go to. I can always transfer, a high school senior might think. But then, once the decision is made and a freshman year has passed, the reality hits that switching schools is a lot more complicated than it seems, and it's hard to start completely over somewhere else. Let's focus on the last stanza. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Now we jump forward in time. We don't know exactly when, but we know that it's ages and ages hence, or from now. So we're probably talking years, not months. We know that this story is important because the speaker will still be telling it many years later. He'll be telling with a sigh, though, which is interesting because sighs can be happy, sad, or merely reflective, and we don't know what kind of sigh this is. So, we know that this choice is probably going to be important for the speaker's future, but we don't know if he's going to be happy about it or not. Two roads diverge in a wood, and I. This line is a repetition of the first line of the poem with the subtraction of the word yellow and the addition of the word and I. The repetition helps to bring the poem to a conclusion. It reminds us what's important in the poem, the concept of choosing between two different paths. Then we get the hesitation of and I and a dash. This lets us know that whatever the speaker is about to say next is important. So the next lines are, I took the one less traveled by. In this line, the speaker sums up his story and tells us that he took the road less traveled by. With the hesitation in the line before, this declaration could be triumphant or regretful. Also, remember it wasn't exactly clear that the road our speaker took was the one that was less traveled. He said at first that it looked less worn, but then that the two roads were actually about equal. Before you start getting mad at our speaker for stretching the truth, remember that he's telling his story far in the future, a long time from when it actually happened. He's predicting that his memory will tell him that he took the road less traveled by, or that he'll lie in future no matter what the reality of the situation was. Finally, the last line, and that has made all the difference. At first glance, it seems that this line is triumphant. The narrator took the path that no one else did, and that is what has made the difference in his life, that made him successful. But he doesn't say that it made him successful. An optimistic reader wants the line to read positively, but it could be read either way. A difference could mean success or utter failure. Remember, the speaker is telling us about what he's going to say in the future, from where he is now just looking down the path as far as he can see. He can't tell if the future that it leads him to is going to be good or bad. He just knows that his choice is important, that it will make all the difference in his life. The speaker of this poem could be saying that this choice or his choice made all the difference while he's surrounded by grandchildren, by fire in a cozy little house, or he could be saying it to the wind while walking alone on the streets. At this point, he doesn't know, and neither do we. So dear friends, this was the poetry, Road Not Taken. So friends, in a nutshell, even if you haven't read The Road Not Taken, it will probably have a familiar ring when you do. It's one of the most popular poems by one of the most famous American writers of 20th century, Robert Frost. Along with the Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, it's probably one of the most taught poems in American schools. Let me disable my spotlight. So he is Robert Frost, and a little bit about him. First published in Frost's collection Mountain Interval in 1916, almost a century later, The Road Not Taken is still quoted left and right by inspirational speakers, writers, commercials, and everyday people. We could go on and on about how famous this poem is, but since it is famous, you probably already know that. While you might not know is that this poem may not be as simple as uplifting as it seems. While the road not taken is often read as resounding nonconformist's credo, the poem isn't so sure about its message. In fact, sometimes it flat out contradicts itself. But the possibility that the poem has multiple meanings doesn't mean that it's not worthy of its popularity. Actually, the poem's ambiguity improves it. Read closely this poem and you'll find out that it is more than popular culture has made it out to be. It's more than a call to go on your own way. It's a reflection on life's hard choices and unknowns. Now, the question is, why should you care so much about this poem? Well, most people have been faced with a fork in the actual path of life and not been sure which path to go down. Of course, today we can whip out a GPS or cell phone and figure out which is the correct path. But if we are beyond the reaches of satellite, we just make a choice, unaided by technology. We might pick the road that gets us where we want to go, or one that takes us somewhere new. But either way, the road we choose takes us to where we are. Just like trying to pick a path when we are driving or walking, we've all had to choose from different paths in life. Which job to take, which college to go to, which girl or boy to ask to homecoming. The list of life choices is endless. And for every metaphorical road we take in life, there is a road not taken. The club we did not join, the class we did not take, the words we did not say. One of the biggest questions we face is whether or not... Excuse me, that's my cell phone. So, what I was telling you is one of the biggest questions we face is whether or not to take the well-beaten, typical path. Is that the best choice? Or should we be non-conformist and take the less traveled route? Years into the future, after making our decisions, how will we feel about the path we have chosen? Friends, Robert Frost's Road Not Taken is about these quandaries present in every person's life. A lot of people think this poem is encouraging us to take the road that's less traveled. And while it's easy to fall into that well-beaten path of analysis, it's not exactly accurate. So make sure that when you read this poem, you take your own road, whether it's the road less traveled or not. If you've liked my explanation, please subscribe and request for video explanation, and I would love to help you. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.